The 2025 season has arrived, as it's time for the return of the WEC, as prototypes and GTs prepare to embark on another year of racing in the pinnacle of sports car endurance competition. But what are the details of this upcoming year of racing? Well, in this video, I'll break down all the information, as this is a season preview for the 2025 World Endurance Championship. This will be the 14th consecutive season of the WEC, and coming into the year, we will see a grid of competitors that is fired up for the new season of racing. Just like last year, the WEC will primarily run two categories, which will be Hypercar and LMGT3, while the LMP2 class will make a one-off return once again for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Like in the past, the Hypercar class features the technologically advanced prototypes of LMH and LMDH out on track, with 4 kinds of Le Mans Hypercars and 4 kinds of LMDH cars, while the GT class will once again feature cars under the GT3 regulations, while 9 kinds of models will race throughout the season. But it's important to know that there will be a change for the class this year, as LMGT3 will now be represented by green number panels instead of the orange ones like in 2024. And in fact, the last time we saw green number panels in the WEC was in 2022, when the LMGTE Pro category was still around. 36 entries will be entered into the full season in 2025, with of course some additional entries coming for Le Mans exclusively, like the LMP2 cars I mentioned a moment ago. The entries across the season will be represented by 13 car manufacturers, which includes Alpine, Aston Martin, BMW, Cadillac, Chevrolet, Ferrari, Ford, Lexus, McLaren, Mercedes, Peugeot, Porsche, and Toyota. For 2025, Aston Martin will finally debut their new hypercar this year. During the first race and across all 2025 events in the championship, you'll be seeing 2 of these beautiful Valkyrie AMR LMH cars racing around the track, and they'll definitely produce a wonderful sound as well, as the car utilizes a Cosworth 6.5 liter naturally aspirated V12 engine. And keep in mind that this will be the only car on the 2025 grid this year that doesn't have a hybrid component. Mercedes is the newcomer for 2025, as the German marque will finally enter the World Endurance Championship to compete in the LMGT3 class exclusively. Mercedes will also make a return to the 24 Hours of Le Mans this year, as they make an appearance for the first time since 1999. The 3-pointed star will be represented by the Italian squad of Iron Lynx, who will run 2 Mercedes AMG GT3s across the season. Although we do gain a manufacturer, we do lose 2 from the previous grid. Both Lamborghini and Isotta Fraschini will unfortunately not return to the WEC in 2025. The Isotta Le Mans hypercar won't be racing at all this year, but Lamborghini's SC63 will continue to compete in IMSA GTP, so thankfully we will still see that particular Italian hypercar racing in 2025. Besides the manufacturers and the respective teams that are representing them, there are quite a few famous and talented names on the grid. Across the field this year, there are confirmed to be 14 former F1 drivers, and included in that list is 2009 Formula 1 World Champion Jenson Button, who returns to the grid this time to drive a Cadillac V Series R. 7-time MotoGP champion Valentino Rossi will also return to the grid, driving that BMW M4 once again for Team WRT, where fresh from his recent stint in Formula 1, Kevin Magnussen is making a long-awaited comeback to endurance racing, driving for BMW in the top flight hypercar class. As I briefly pointed out, the World Endurance Championship is heading into its 14th consecutive season, as the modern WEC, which we see today, was established back in 2012, with Audi and their successful trio of André Lauderer, Benoit Trullier, and Marcel Fassler taking the first championship, with that all-conquering Audi R18 e-tron Quattro. However, the WEC can trace its roots even further back. Back then, under a different name, this series was known as the World Sports Car Championship, and held its inaugural season in 1953. Like the modern equivalent, the WEC housed the 24 Hours of Le Mans and other epic sports car endurance races across the world, through eras like Group 6 or Group C, for example. Eventually, though, the WEC was folded in 1992, and for the next 20 years, sports car races were kind of scattered throughout a variety of championships. But after the Intercontinental Le Mans Cup, which lasted till 2011, a new championship and rebirth of world endurance racing was formed in 2012, and the rest is history. For 2025, the WEC will be continuing an evolving adventure, which has subsequently introduced another golden age in prototype and GT racing, and that's shown through multiple factors, including the increasing popularity of fans attending WEC races, especially like the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Speaking of the races, in 2025, the series will be visiting 8 tracks and 8 different countries, just like the year before. Round 1 takes us to the Losail International Circuit, which will be the season opener of the Qatar 1812 km, which in fact is the second longest endurance race on the calendar, lasting around 10 hours, and takes place on February 28th. Next on April 20th is Round 2 in Italy, which will be the second running of the WEC 6 Hours of Imola. Following that is the Total Energies 6 Hours of Spa, which takes place on May 10th. And then, just like in the past, it's the big event, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which happens on June 14th and 15th this year. After the big race is Round 5, which is the Rolex 6 Hours of Sao Paulo in Brazil, which happens on July 13th. Next, like last year, the WEC heads to North America for Round 6 in Austin, Texas, for the reoccurring Lone Star Le Mans event, which will happen on September 7th this year. The penultimate round of the season is in Oyama, Japan, which takes place 3 weeks later on September 28th, and that will be the 6 Hours of Fuji. Finally, as is tradition, the season will conclude on November 8th with the Batco Energy's 8 Hours of Bahrain race. One thing that's new for 2025 is that the hypercar class will have at least 2 kinds of cars racing out on track. This is because of the new 2-car mandate rule, which was implemented for 2025, which suggests that factory teams must enter 2 cars. And if you're wondering about the privateer entries like the single Proton competition Porsche, for example, it's important to know that the customer entries are not affected by this rule. For 2025, the Hypercar and LMGT3 classes will also be affected by a race-by-race balance of performance set for each kind of car, which, like before, will affect the car in ways like weight and power outputs, for example. Also, when the LMP2 class comes for Le Mans, those entries will not be affected by the BOP. Speaking of Le Mans, like in years before, the grid size will almost double compared to the full season. And in addition to those P2 cars, we will also see more hypercars and GT3s, and the majority of the additional 2025 entries will come because of special invitations. For example, IMSA Team AWA achieved the Bob Aitken Award last season, so their Corvette Z06 GT3R, which usually competes over in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, has been locked in to compete in the big WEC event in June. Moving on, and for the season ahead, there will be 4 qualifying sessions that will set up the grid for the race, 2 for LMGT3 and 2 for Hypercar. First, there's a normal qualifying session, which features all class cars. Then there's the Hyperpole session, which features a set amount of cars fighting for pole position in class. When it comes to the length of these events, there are 5 normal endurance races which all last 6 hours. And then there are 3 big endurance races, which of course includes the 24 Hours of Le Mans, in addition to the Qatar 1812 km and the 8 Hours of Bahrain. Now, as for watching the action live in 2025, the best place to watch is through the official FIA WEC app, although there are other places to catch the action live. For example, in the US, viewers will be able to tune in on the Max streaming service for WEC events. For further information on watching the venues, I'll redirect you to this video, which is linked in the description and in the top right corner. So that concludes my 2025 season preview for the World Endurance Championship. Are you looking forward to the new season ahead? And who are you cheering for? Well, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you like endurance racing, definitely subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I'm releasing videos on a weekly basis regarding the WEC, IMSA, Intercontinental GT, and much more. To watch more content now, check out these suggested videos I've put on screen. For now though, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.